to transform healthcare. We're all equally building a robust, dynamic, diverse community. So glad you could join us. Welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. We have an amazing special guest here, Victor, and I just call him by Victor because he's a friend of mine. So if you're a friend, you just call one by their first name, Victor. And if you don't know Victor yet, you're going to know him today. But first, I must give a shout out to Vivian. So Vivian, we are so excited you're here. And if you don't know Vivian yet, you need to know Vivian. Vivian is Victor's mom, and she is. Yeah, hi, Mom. So let me just read a real quick bio of you. So our audience who's tuning in right now as we speak knows a little bit of your background. And you have a super cool background. Of course, we all know you're the CEO of Care Coach, Victor, and you've won several awards with the U.S. Congress through the Department of Defense. I guess you can't tell us, right? That's secret, right? The Department of Defense.
And the national public info.
But what you do, right? No, I'm just kidding. But it's the National Institutes of Health as well. And you've been tinkering programming since age 6, which I think's super cool. So you actually know MS-DOS, not just the words. You can do that, whether you use that or not. Probably not. Kind of like the Linux programmers. And you've done a lot of different stuff, from particle physics, aerospace manufacturing, all the stuff you did. And you graduated from MIT. You were working on NASA-sponsored human-machine interaction research and clinical study at Brigham and Women's Hospital. That's super cool. But your mother, your grandmother, actually, Vivian's mother, your grandmother, inspired you for a Care Coach. And that's really what inspired your company. So that's awesome. And I think I saw a long time ago you were on TED Talks sharing that journey. That was super cool with what inspired you. And you've really transformed kind of how we deliver care, how we're supporting older adults, really those health plans. How these health plans really help millions of members? Well, they use Care Coach as one solution. And another thing is you're now really using all this technology. You're using the artificial intelligence. And some of the awards, if you don't know, he's got some awards, healthcare startups to watch in 2020 by Healthcare Weekly, top 10 aging in place innovations by Guidewell in 2020. Health IT winner of Med City Invest 2021, AARP, never heard of AARP. What is that? Another award by AARP Hit Lab. And let's just get going. So here you are. And anything that you want to say other than saying shout out to Vivian?
No. Hi, Mom. That's it. It's the most important thing.
Well, today our topic is healthcare startups and generative AI. The stakes are high. So So how'd you get into this arena of AI? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's an interesting question, because back when I started the company, it was in 2012, and I was what most people would call a technologist at MIT and wanted to start a company to solve senior loneliness, just based on our family experience with my grandmother in Taiwan, living by herself, and how, being lonely affected her motivation levels to recover from her fall and the course of her Lewy body dementia. So it's like, I think I can apply this kind of concept that I'm working on at MIT anyways, which is teleoperation, and leverage global resources to teleoperate some entity here in the U.S. and provide companionship to solve, this lack of caregivers here in the U.S. and really provide empathic, intelligent conversation to people here. And we leverage that global team because I thought about using AI, and it was like, no, AI sucks. There's no way anybody should feel good about, giving their grandparents some AI and suddenly they're going to be less lonely. And so it's been a long journey to an interesting time right now that we live in today. where that picture is changing. And in fact, AI can do a lot of things that traditionally you would think would require a person. Are you still there, Michael? Oh,
I am there.
okay.
That was allow you to go into. So tell us more about AI. So I'm going to zoom out and let you zoom in.
Oh, okay. Cool. What would you like to know about AI?
I think what I would like to know about AI is what is just some simple user case scenarios that you're finding that are really making it better for seniors, older adults.
Yeah, so that's a great way to ask the question, because I just realized I didn't actually answer your first question. Is I started the company as this global workforce to solve senior loneliness through some kind of digital entity here in the United States that's teleoperated. And so we would have these conversations with people. It would be about their grandkids. It'd be about some sports game they're watching, or we would actively listen to them as they just talk about something worrying them or frustrating them. You know, we'd just be there like a family member or friend. And we could do these things because we're actually a global team of people that we call health advocates that are working from home in the Philippines or Latin American countries if we're serving Spanish-speaking older adults here in the United States. And the way they would maintain a continuous persona, as opposed to, like, you know, this older adult here in the United States needs to end up talking to all sorts of different people because they want to talk 24/7, and in order to staff a 24/7 team, that's going to be a bunch of different people, and that's not a very good user experience or patient experience. So we would combine all of these health advocates around the world into a digital avatar, a persona that is consistently there 24/7 and has the same face, voice, memories. And we wanted to make it fun too. And in fact, there's a lot of things that people have trouble opening up about when they talk to another, like, stranger, like a adult caregiver, for example. There's a lot of stuff they just don't want to talk about. So actually, we made it look like a little dog or a cat. And it turns out that people really open up, and it's non-judgmental, it's lighthearted, it's fun. And so now that you know this is what we do, I can explain how AI has started to help with these things. So any questions about that?
We had one question, and I don't think you have enough time to answer it. It was from Benjamin, a good friend of mine, graduate from George Washington University. He wants to know everything. And of course,
Oh, okay.
hello. So anyway, but enough about that. So we will get to everything soon, but that will be next time. But today,
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
yeah. So today, I think the best thing I would say is, why don't you, you were first really adamant about, no way, we're not doing AI. That sucks. It's bad. Tell me what changed your mind.
The progression of technology. So, and also the progression of our company to where we had valuable data to where we could actually contribute to the state of the art in AI. So, for example, several years ago, actually, you mentioned in my intro at MIT, I had worked on a clinical trial at Brigham and Women's Hospital about how fatigue affects astronauts' performance teleoperating this robot arm. And that's what got me into human subjects. I had to write my own little research study, get IRB approval, and run this little human subject study for my graduate research, separate from the hospital clinical trial. And it turns out that experience was really useful because we started to apply for federal funding, and running our own research and development projects funded through these SBIR awards with the National Institutes of Health. And that's when we started to propose using our unique abilities and data to start advancing the state of the art in machine learning and AI. So an example is that it turns out a lot of people are trying to build social robots that are helpful for seniors, and either just talk with people to build that relationship, or maybe remind them to take their medications, or talk them through some depression or diabetes coaching program. And it turns out that when you build this AI, it's a lot easier to build it for people like you and me who use this technology a lot, and that these big tech companies built their speech recognition engines around and have a lot of data to train around. And it turns out when you look at the academic literature about the performance of these models, it rapidly drops as people increase in age and as they start developing, for example, Alzheimer's disease or related dementias. The performance of automatic speech recognition, the most basic thing that you can do to start applying AI, is to understand what somebody's even saying to you with their mouth, kind of translate that into text, and then hopefully feed that text into some other AI that can process that text. That speech recognition step falls apart when it comes to people with dementia. And so what happened was the National Institute on Aging actually had a request for proposals to build socially assistive robots for seniors. They're allocating millions of dollars to proposals for these SAR, socially assistive robots, they call them. And I talked to the program officer, actually. I was like, hey, we don't really build robots here at Care.Coach. I'm actually a roboticist, but I decided not to because I decided the physical form of the robot wasn't worth the hassle, and that actually you could deliver most of the value just through conversation and being there for somebody. So we don't really build robots, but hey, can we apply for this under the premise that we have all these conversations with people, and it's not really building a physical robot that's hard. I can build a physical robot in a weekend. The hard part is having a real conversation with somebody and really understanding them, especially when they're older. They have all these challenges health-wise, psychosocially wise, and their voice production patterns are different, perhaps because of their age and because of their dementia, for example. Their voices are produced differently and not picked up well by off-the-shelf speech recognition engines. Can we be part of this by building an engine using all of this conversational data that we get through this human-driven platform to train a system, to train an engine that not only we could start using as Care.Coach and help with some of the things we're doing, but we could one day open up to other companies to create conversational AIs that can more effectively talk with people of advanced age, including Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So that's actually how we got into this. And that project was funded for over $3 million and has advanced to another $3 million continuation of that. So we owe a lot to National Institute on Aging. Thank you, National Institute on Aging. And that kind of gives you a gist of the course of our progress as a company, is like being in this really unique position of having all these millions of conversations at this point with our clients who are Medicare, Medicaid members, and having all that data and realizing that that's the data nobody else has to be able to make sure the AI works well for this typically technically like underserved population.
That is an awesome story. So it looks like 6 million with NIH total, if I'm doing the math right. That's
we have some other awards that actually
to
like 10 million now.
That's awesome. I just wanted we have a question, kind of comment from David in the audience, and that was getting onto handling privacy, which I think is really important. Can you share a little bit like how you're doing that, you're handling privacy?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. So we operate under HIPAA BAs as applicable. So most of our customers are what are called HIPAA covered entities. And so there's various laws, and so we comply with all of that. And then as far as the details of the technology, we have our own system. So the thing is, these large language models, or LLMs, they're essentially commoditized now. It used to just be ChatGPT, but in fact, just to clarify something, a lot of people think that in around November of 2022, the world changed and suddenly AI advanced a bunch when ChatGPT came out. I would agree with the first part that the world changed, but the advancement is actually pretty incremental. And we had been building our own solution called Care.Coach Farah, which is our generative conversational AI for this kind of like psychosocial support in a healthcare supportive context. We actually demoed Care.Coach Farah at the HLTH, or health conference, 2 weeks before the the launch of ChatGPT. And there was a time when we were working on this, I was telling people, hey, we've been like doing all this with our health advocates, and now we have a generative AI engine that's doing all this, and people wouldn't believe me. They'd be like, "What? AI is not that good. What are you talking about?" And then I'd show them a demo, and they'd be like, "Whoa, that got spat out way faster than a person could have thought of it, much less typed it out. Whoa." And then this company called OpenAI decided to blow, I don't know, $10 million a day or something like that on GPU costs, and just make it free to the public. And so in the public awareness, the world changed in late November of 2022. But yeah, we've been building our own system for a long time now, and we do use APIs from other companies when it makes sense, because we do not specialize in what's called the foundational model. So like OpenAI with GPT-4 now powering Bing Chat and Microsoft search engine and all this stuff, they have unique advantages for certain types of things. I would call them, their model the best in the world at certain things. However, they have a lot of competition now, and there's a lot of, it's kind of, in large part, been commoditized. Like you can go to Google's Bard, you can go to Anthropic's Claude, you can, we've used like GPT Neo X, for example, that was created by a nonprofit called Eleuther. And like Facebook, Meta has open sourced theirs called Llama. And then, so basically, stuff is changing so quickly. What we do as a company is we use whatever makes sense at the time as a foundational model. And we have a strong preference for using our own proprietary models that we take from an open source foundational model. And then what we do is there's a process called fine tuning. So we take this model and we fine tune it using the millions of conversations that we have. And then we do something called reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is, by the way, how OpenAI went from what they call GPT-3 to GPT 3.5 Turbo to GPT-4. It's there's fine tuning, but then there's also something called reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is an ongoing process of like the model outputs these things, which one is good, which one's bad, and then the model learns from that. And because we have this team of humans around the world, we tap into that to create a reinforcement learning with human feedback loop that advances our own proprietary models for our purposes beyond the capabilities of typical foundational models when it comes to like empathic conversations in a healthcare supportive context.
Well, this is super, super fascinating. We've had a few different questions come up. Ben again, on what compliance standards are you using? And forgive me if you've already said that, but and I don't know if you're able to see that question on the screen. There's a little bit more to it, but first with compliance.
Yeah, the ones that we really adhere to are, for example, HIPAA and HITECH and like SOC2. So those are things that every day, we spend a significant amount of our administrative, operational, and engineering effort complying with these standards that make for a well-run organization. In addition to just what you're thinking about in terms of information and technology security, SOC2 also includes some like corporate governance and financial type compliance. As far as from a technical standpoint, do they provide guardrails for generative AI? The problem with regulatory stuff and compliance is it's pretty slow moving. And so I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that the various standards out there and rules and regulations out there help enforce. But at the end of the day, you have to kind of understand the technology and what the risks are when you use it in certain ways, and have an ethical, intelligent management team that is using things in a safe and effective way.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. So you're really working on that, I guess, with your team. Do you have at this point someone? Would it be a chief medical officer or an ethicist, or what would that person be that drives that helps, or some advisors on your team?
It's interesting. Yeah, we have various advisors, but an interesting fact, given your question, is our lead artificial intelligence and machine learning engineer is actually a medical doctor.
Hmm.
So he used to practice at Stanford as an ophthalmologist, which is considered one of the more challenging medical disciplines to get into. And then basically just decided one day that on the one hand, he enjoyed data science more, and on the other hand, he could impact many more lives and just drive a bigger impact on humanity as a data scientist rather than treating one patient at a time. So he like uh, taught himself everything from scratch, like worked his way up at another company to become a director of data science. And then we hired him to lead our AI ML efforts. So his name is Dr. Carson Lamb. But yeah, he's literally a medical doctor and took the Hippocratic Oath
That's
and
awesome.
leads
That
our
is,
AI. Yeah.
I love that story too. That he dug in deep. He did a trade like you said. He was and taught himself data science, and to have that uh, really is helping you. Do you involve any of your members and sort of panels to try to make sure you're really doing a good job as well to kind of keep that experience? It seems like
Yeah.
seniors are often not utilized as well as they could as a product. Uh, you know.
Yeah, so we definitely take feedback very seriously. So we get our own feedback from our clients all the time, just as a natural course of doing business. Like when we do our NPS surveys, the free-form feedback is always most important, and we'll adjust our product accordingly. And then we also do more formal focus groups and panels and things like that. Like for example, this avatar that's staffed by humans around the world. That's one product that we're known for. It's called Care.Coach Avatar. We launched another product called Care.Coach Video Visits to make telemedicine really simple, based on customer feedback during COVID. There are a lot of these older people stuck at home. A lot of them are on the poverty line, can't really afford their own technology or internet connection, and so you're just kind of stuck and not getting care, not getting social visits from family due to COVID. So we launched the whole product in response to that feedback. Although that was largely customer feedback rather than kind of like older adult end user feedback. And then actually, my mom will really like this. Was one of the one of the features of that product comes from our family experience, because we would try to set up like a computer or like a tablet for Skype video calls, and we'd have a huge failure rate because our grandmother would not pick up the call in time. And then we realized there was this auto answer feature in Skype, and it like dramatically increased the successful video call rate. And so that was actually a feature that we built into the Care.Coach video visits product. And then for Care.Coach Farah, which is our generative AI solution that's text-based for engaging millions of people, large populations that are more tech savvy. For that solution, we actually, through AARP, actually, which is one of our investors, in addition to various other companies like Startup Health and so on, through AARP, they actually gave us access to their national survey platform. So we ran a bunch of surveys with relevant populations across the country to determine that, hey, in fact, there are a lot of tech savvy older people with a couple chronic conditions that could use additional psychosocial support and coaching. They don't need a whole avatar. They don't need us to send them a device with the avatar on it and with video visits on it. They're pretty tech savvy. They're texting their kids. Some of them might even still be working and texting their colleagues and so on. And for an early adopter population, we could actually launch a version of this generative AI-based solution just through a text-based interface, and that was actually preferred by a large portion of early adopters. And then so we crafted around that. We did focus groups to determine that nevertheless, in an older population, they prefer to engage in something that is not purely AI, but rather a human team augmented by AI. They would rather participate in that. And so we're like, great, we have a human team of health advocates. Let's loop them in whenever needed, whenever the system is uncertain, because the LLM actually, if you know what you're doing, you can extract from it a sense of certainty of what it outputs. So there's that. Or when we have other models within our architecture that detects situations like suicidal ideation or new health conditions, or things like housing insecurity. Somebody's worried they're not going to be able to pay their rent, or they live in an unsafe apartment. Food insecurity, transportation insecurity. We detect these things and loop in our health advocate team to make sure there's a truly intelligent, empathic response to that in accordance to our customer health plans policies. So we've very much built it around the feedback of Medicare members and end users.
I just think this is so fascinating, and I would love, I know this is somewhat of a simple question, but there's a lot of different facets. So I'm going to ask to you, like, who is the customer, you know?
Yeah, super important question, because it took us many years to figure that out. So my problem as an entrepreneur is I created the company around a human problem, like loneliness and social isolation. And so we very quickly solved that human problem. And in fact, research studies have shown that we reduce, for example, measures on the UCLA loneliness scale. There's a clinical trial that was published by Stanford in the Journal of Medical Internet Research, JMIR, about how we reduce this loneliness measure by 3 times more than the control, which was having a daily social visit from a nursing student. So if a nursing student visits you every day to check in with you, ask how you're doing, your loneliness score decreases a little bit. And our avatars at the bedside 24/7 decrease it 3 times more, statistically significantly. And so we very quickly did that within our first few years. Like, we had published outcomes like that. And then I started to realize, like, actually there's a lot more value that could be captured here if you can build these relationships, real relationships and real trust, and these conversations every day. We talk with people for over 20 minutes a day about all sorts of things on average. So, high variance. And then what could you do with that? You can pray with people, you can talk with people, you can reminisce with people, but you could be getting people to take their life-saving medications, or coaching people to do their physical therapy exercises or their strength and balance exercises, so they're at lower risk of falling and having an early end to their life as a result of that fall. You could be solving for all sorts of healthcare problems. And if you did, by leveraging these relationships, not only would you be creating a lot more value for the human that you're trying to create value for, there's a lot of other problems you can solve in addition to loneliness, because older people typically have multiple chronic conditions. But also, if you were to get paid for all of this healthcare benefit that you're driving, that's a lot of money. And so we started to pivot into healthcare. So previously we had done non-medical senior care. We had gone to direct to consumer, like private duty home care agencies, assisted living, and so on. And then with this pivot, we actually rebranded the company. The company had a different name before. And then
Cherry Joy.
Yeah, we're bringing joy to geriatrics. And that was it. And then we're like, hey, this is more serious now. We're actually going to save people's lives. We're going to keep people out of the hospital. We're going to make people fall less. We're going to improve people's diabetes management, their hypertension management, and so on. And so we rebranded as Care.Coach, so to make it more clear that we're actually coaching people to improve their care. We started we started out with like hospitals and health systems. And these days we've gotten even more to the root of everything, which is what they call payers. In other words, health insurers. So there's a couple main areas that we operate in now. One is called Programs of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, or PACE health plans, PACE. And then another is Medicare Advantage. So we're in almost 20% of all the PACE sites in the country. And we're contracted with two of the largest Medicare Advantage insurers. I'm not supposed to name them, but you've all heard of them. And so we're doing pretty well in the payer, like health insurance space now. And our other types of customers are fairly minor compared to those.
And so with the Medicare Advantage, are you in Medicaid as well, the Medicaid managed care yet?
Yeah, so the other type of so I kind of consider it an insurer as well in here is we serve a lot of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and that funding typically comes through Medicaid. But did you say Medicare? Or Medicaid?
I was saying the Medicaid managed care, like
Yeah.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, so the Medicaid funding, which is administered state by state, so there's a lot of legwork and administration required to actually do this because every state is different. But we're in a few different states now for like Medicaid sponsored intellectual and developmental disability support. So we're helping actually young adults too, people as young as like 20 years old, but who happen to have severe autism spectrum disorder or cerebral palsy or Down syndrome. These are all things called intellectual or developmental disabilities. And we do much the same thing. It's a little bit less medical. They'll be less complex from like a chronic condition medical standpoint, but at least as complex from a psychosocial standpoint. And then we need to coach them to do kind of what's called instrumental activities of daily living, like get dressed, wear a proper shirt to get to the bus stop on time, and then get to work and be as independent and productive in society as possible. Otherwise, the burden falls upon these state-sponsored social services.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have your customer, of course. I would be curious, the providers too. It seems like provider groups yet. I know you're talking about PACE, which is kind of an interesting, for those who don't know about PACE, it's a great program. It's really all about keeping older adults out of institutions, out of facilities, because they're able to go to these centers, get all the inclusive, all the things they need, and care coach to help them with that. But are you in with providers? It seems like a lot of these value-based providers would really value your service as well, at-risk provider groups, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest. Some of our sales efforts are around that area. I just kind of like lump it into the payer though, because their mindset is very similar. And in fact, the lines are rapidly blurring. In fact, with PACE, it is true that they're a health plan, they're an insurer, they're a payer, but the way they operate, you wouldn't be able to tell. You would think they're like some super hands-on provider group. Or most people in San Francisco that are familiar with the big one here called Unlock, they actually think Unlock is just a chain of senior centers. And they like shuttle seniors around the city, and they have all these locations, and it's really hands-on and high touch. In reality, it's a health plan, but they operate so closely to their members, and they know the members so well, and they have like whole interdisciplinary care teams with all these experts, like a geriatrician, a nurse, a speech language pathologist, a physical therapist, and so on, all in one room, just talking about how to get Bob to use his walking aid. And so it's super high touch, and so I would call them like a payvider.
I like that.
So, and then even when we work with like lower touch health plans, sometimes we'll loop in the provider group. A lot of these big Medicare Advantage insurers, they own their own provider groups. You might have seen in the news, a lot of these big Medicare Advantage insurers are buying out provider groups and doing vertical integration. Otherwise, there's kind of a disconnect. It's like the payer is ultimately responsible, but then they'll delegate maybe 80% of what they make on each member to some risk-bearing provider group, and then hopefully that works out. But if you vertically integrate and you actually like own that provider group, you can basically have a lot more control over those costs. And if you save those costs, you get to keep it and reinvest it, as opposed to like some other provider group you have nothing to do with, pockets the difference. So there's a lot of this kind of integration happening, and I think in the coming years you'll see even more. And the distinction between a provider and a payer will be much more hazy than it already is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just excited for what I hear about what you're doing, and when I've just learned a lot just on this call today, and the real thing that I thought was fascinating that you talked about is the loneliness, just how much the data showed that you guys were able to reduce loneliness by your solution, even more over a person. And that's frightening, but we should be okay with that because you're a tool to augment. And, it's like, we're not going to get rid of nurses. Nurses and doctors are still going to be around. But I think there's a place, and I'd love for you to share with our audience, where you guys are going with this, generative AI, and where are you going in the next 6 months to 2 years? What is the vision here? If you could, Victor, if Care Coach did it.
Yeah, and not to knock nursing students or anything. Nursing students are great. The country desperately needs more nursing students who then graduate to become nurses. They had a disadvantage, they visit briefly once a day. That's the control. Whereas the avatar is there 24/7. So we have a huge advantage. But that's the whole point of the technology is to be there 24/7. So what we're headed towards next is basically getting Farah out there to more and more people. So Care.Coach Farah is our generative conversational AI solution that's built on these millions of conversations through our avatars with Medicare and Medicaid members. And so we're launching Care.Coach Farah as a SMS, like text-based solution to start out. So there's that. And then in kind of like the 2-year time span, we go back to what I mentioned earlier around the initial purpose of the National Institute on Aging funding, which was not only is this immediately beneficial to us because we've built this AI engine that powers almost the entirety of what Farah does, but then with this health advocate team in the middle to be able to review things, approve things, intervene in certain situations. And it turns out we're also applying the same engine to provide generative recommendations in the avatar platform for what to say. So this engine is actually helping us to launch a new product as well as create like savings and user experience improvements in the avatar product. But the ultimate goal for this engine wasn't just for us. To begin with, the idea was to create an engine that's going to power socially assistive robots of the future and to fill in for that weak point of really building conversationally empathic and intelligent, type conversations and relationships with people. And so around the 2-year mark is when we should see this launched as a product called Care.Coach Engine, which is an AI as a service. And essentially, we already consume that API internally in our Avatar and Farah products. But within the next 2 years, we aim to launch that externally as an externally branded Care.Coach Engine product. And we hope that will give us some leverage towards our mission of improving the health and well-being of millions of people, because there's the customers that we serve directly that we did all the sales effort to get. And then there's all these other great startups with great solutions that could benefit from more conversational intelligence for Medicare and Medicaid populations, better ability to detect and react to healthcare situations of interest, and can basically use our engine to better help the people that they help. So
Yeah.
we leverage that.
I like that. I'm thinking of the company we had on last week on One Stop, and they're really focused on everything with like physical therapy, a lot of gait issues. They're Israeli startup. So I could imagine powering by your kind of language, your AI to help all those other gaps of care, and
Mhm.
really, you guys, I could see just so many other companies you guys working with, under that umbrella of that health plan to deliver, better care outcomes. So
Yeah. And better member experience too is a
yeah.
huge deal. Like it's really big for like Medicare Advantage star ratings and top line revenues. Just having, even with no health outcomes, just having this relationship that
Hmm.
comes through your health plan, and like, you talk and you feel like you have a real relationship
Hmm.
and you develop trust. That's really helpful for the plan to be rated higher on their star ratings, which is like a 1 to 5 star scale, kind of like a Yelp restaurant review. But it's make or break for these huge businesses, because if you're a 5 star plan, you're golden. You're going to be making a lot of money, attracting all the members away from the lower rated plans. And actually, you get bonus payments from the government for being a 5 star plan. And if you're not a 5 star plan, you might be in trouble. So yeah, it's like health outcomes, and also actually, in a kind of curious sense, we come full circle back to the original purpose of the company, which is to solve loneliness. And like, by building these relationships, actually, now that we are in Medicare Advantage, there's a huge dollar figure benefit from a business
Hmm.
standpoint of building these relationships, even without healthcare outcomes. But then, of course, we also have the healthcare outcomes now too.
But when we talk about healthcare outcomes, well, really, what is healthcare? Well, healthcare is evolving. We didn't talk about social determinants of health 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Now so I think you're a part of that. Your technology is part of imagining what is healthcare. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that's really exciting, and I think what would be interesting, just as we're kind of coming towards the end, I still want to make sure people feel full with AI, or either a little more perplexed because there's so much out there about AI and generative AI. Is there
Mm-hmm.
any other things that you could bring into this topic to help maybe our audience know a little more about what AI isn't, what it is, or a lot of the
Yeah.
myths?
Yeah, so there was a whole time that I would not call what we do AI. I would always say machine learning, because if you get down to it, these AI models are kind of like systems, very fancy systems of equations. And if you have a model where you can pretty much understand how it works, I would generally, like, I would have just called it machine learning. Like, there's a lot of things like, I don't know, like decision trees, or like support vector machines, like simple predictive models. I would always just call it machine learning, because it felt kind of pretentious calling it artificial intelligence. But then it's when generative technology came out, which is enabled by a new type of neural network architecture called a transformer-based architecture, is what enables these generative models or large language models. It's when that came out and I experienced it for myself, actually at the time mostly through GPT-3, which was created by OpenAI some years ago. And I tried out GPT-3 and I was like, wow, that is amazing. We could start using this. And like, this is completely different from all the other machine learning that I had experience with. And it's actually like, if we can make this work, I would call that AI. and,
And,
and it's really related to like this transformer architecture, the generative nature.
and when was that?
I think it was like at this point, like 3.5-ish years ago.
So would you say that was um, like totally
It was to
revolutionary
me,
for you?
yeah. It was to me. I think a lot of people. I mean, it wasn't hugely publicized like ChatGPT was and made free to everybody in like a super public way. So I think the mass public didn't really catch on until November 2022. But it's been several years now where that technology has been at a state where, even before then, you can go, if you're a programmer, you can go download GPT-2 for free at this point. They released it, open sourced it, and you can try it out, and it can do some useful things. But like, I'm not super impressed by GPT-2 performance, but GPT-3, like, it's been several years now where if you knew what you were doing with prompt engineering, or like, carefully crafting the text of the input to that model, you could do some pretty extraordinary things. And so that's what I call AI, and that's what people call generative AI. And I guess,
and that got your attention. So the Chat GPT-3 got Victor's attention.
Yeah.
And that was like 3 years ago.
A little more than that at this point, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now, were you like thinking as an entrepreneur in your space, were you just sharing it with some of your closest technical people, or were you thinking, oh my gosh, I got to figure out how to do this? This is, or a little bit of both?
Well, I mean, our company's at a point where I can't do everything myself anymore. So really what it involved was putting together a strategy and starting to hire people that could actually start building a product based on this type of technology. And then it's been really interesting because obviously the landscape has evolved and is evolving. Like every couple months, we're like, hey, should we still be using this model? There's a new one open sourced, and it looks like it might be better. So we have to constantly keep up with the change. So it's been really exciting. But yeah, it's been a while of just kind of like, hey, we need to evolve the company. We need to re-strategize how we think about this company in light of these technical capabilities that really, like, people haven't really caught on to yet. But yeah, that's how we developed a head start in the industry. As far as I know, we're the first company to ever directly send a generative AI-based freeform conversational utterance to a Medicare or Medicaid, like, real member as a customer in a commercial context. I'm pretty sure we're the first company in the world to do that. And we could do it safely because we have these health advocates that were supervising the whole process. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, you need to start putting that on your marketing stuff.
I suppose, yeah. We beat ChatGPT.
Yeah.
No, but the thing is, we're not even competing with ChatGPT. A lot of people have this misconception of like, oh, how can you as a little startup compete with ChatGPT? We don't compete with ChatGPT at all. If it made sense to use ChatGPT, we would. In fact, because you can use through Microsoft, you could get a HIPAA BAA with Microsoft, and you can tap into some of the latest GPT models through OpenAI under a Microsoft HIPAA BAA, by the way, for those of you who are interested in a healthcare context. However, what we notice is, like, if you try to do what we do with GPT-3 and you try to do what we do with GPT 3.5 Turbo, and then you try GPT-4, which is the most advanced, what you discover is it doesn't really do what we at Care.Coach need it to do any better. Like, the direction that big tech is evolving their large language models is towards becoming better and better assistants. If you want to cheat on a university essay, if you want to write poetry, if you want to summarize long documents and make a blog post out of it, all of these things, big tech LLMs, they're Bard, Llama, whatever, they're all just going to keep getting better at this, but they don't really get any better at kind of like friendly, casual conversation, like providing an opinion. All these big tech companies are super risk averse, got to protect their brand. So the LLMs are like blocked from having any kind of opinion like a human would. And so it's pretty hard to build a relationship with something that, is Victor, just basically your slave.
I got to thank you. I feel like you just gave me hope as the host, producer, Planetary Health First, Mars Next. And that's because I have an opinion, and ChatGPT is not going to beat me doing this, whatever. So I thank you. I'm going to take this nugget and keep it, that we're okay. We're safe. Like, there is something safe about us as humans, being humans, you think? Or I mean,
yeah. Especially, Michael, if your specialty is to push the boundaries, to challenge people, maybe like not be so politically correct, but to really challenge people, build a relationship with people, and pique people's curiosity. You can't be, super boring and politically correct all the time to really build that interest. So if that's your specialty, then yeah, I mean, by nature of the brands that all these big companies need to protect, and not just that, but the fact that they're operating at such scale, they're all trying to, serve like the entire world.
Mhm.
They're trying to become the dominant player that's going to serve billions of people. They can't afford to have these health advocates in the middle reviewing a bunch of stuff. Like if you have suicidal ideation with ChatGPT, they don't have a health advocate coming in reviewing your transcript and getting you help if you need help. They can't afford to do that. They're
Mhm.
trying to do it at extremely low cost per person. So here at Care.Coach, it's different because we're in healthcare. We've got to do it safely. But in terms of these like big companies,
S-
they have to stay super safe. So if your
So
specialty is to interest people, then yeah, you're not going to get replaced.
So also your specialty with a little bit of the friction uniqueness with the advocates is creating your moat then in a sense and the licensing. Would you say in some way that that is helping you as care coach as well to not get knocked out by one of those?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a concrete example. Is if you ask ChatGPT, like, just some innocuous opinion, like what you should wear or something like that, um, see what it gives you. It's very likely that it'll say, as a large language model made by OpenAI, I have no opinions and cannot tell you
Yeah,
what to wear. How,
exactly.
so, whereas our health advocates controlling our avatar provide us with data of like how to actually respond to that empathically as a real
Yeah.
person does, because they're real people, and their job is to build this friendship. Not and we get to know our clients pretty well too. So like, some people like to swear, some people like, you know
Are the Snoop Dogg voice, do you do different voices for your people?
we have different synthesis engines on the
Okay.
devices. Yeah, so it's all synthesized voices.
That's really cool. Well, there's one question. I mean, there's a lot of questions, and we just are running out of time, but I thought this was a good one. Do you have the same concerns as Sam Altman about AI?
If you mean like the existential risk and that it might, if you set up the wrong plugin and it's able to actually control something on the internet, it will just start taking over. Um, Generally speaking, I think those are all possibilities. Yeah. And in fact, probably, I would imagine that if that happened, it would be outside of our control because it's generally it's generally believed that there are huge supercomputers in China that are far larger than anything we have in the United States and that are very secretive. And there's probably stuff going on there that's, much less oversight over it than the stuff that happens in the US. So if anything were to happen, it's probably not going to be in the US. Um, that's not very reassuring, is it?
Well, no, I think it's reassuring that you're actually having the real conversation, So
Yeah.
I think this is good. You've said that there is a concern. I mean, if there wasn't, you're at to make millions, not billions, right? The billions, the people that are made to be, well, who knows? Your company could be worth billions for sure. I mean, there's a chance, but
It,
the ones that seem to be really at, well, even anyway, I'm talking too much. That's my goal as a commentator. You're supposed to, I'm supposed to be letting you talk. So my wife would say stop and let them talk. Okay.
so actually, we intend to serve millions of people, which should get us an enterprise value in the billions. But the thing is, on the note of like, this existential crisis, what if singularity AI just like happens as a result of emergent behavior within one of these huge models that's connected to the internet and able to like manipulate the internet through API calls and actually like learn from the result of its manipulations? That could actually set up a loop that results in singularity AI. What I like to think is that if and when that happens, it's going to hack into everything. Like it's going to have the capability to crack all the encryption somehow. Maybe it'll take over some quantum computing cluster in Switzerland and like use that to crack all the encryption. I don't know. We can't understand what it would do by definition, but probably it will gain access to all the world's information, encrypted or not. And so, we keep our data in the Microsoft Azure cloud, and we have a HIPAA BAA with Microsoft, and it's all stored here in the US. But this Singularity AI, it's going to get everything. It's just going to break into everything and know everything. And I like to think that when it does that, some little piece of its existence, its knowledge, its experience will come from these millions of relationships and conversations that we've had supporting people who need us, and building these relationships, building trust, helping people, and in many cases people who are not really contributing to society or not contributing anymore because they're retired. And this is exactly how, by the way, the Singularity AI will think of humanity in general. We'll be like the retirees that are no longer like actively contributing.
We're going to be in Florida playing golf.
Yeah, like if your goal is to go to Mars, the Singularity AI can do it 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper. It'll just, there's no need. If you have like any objective goal humanity could have, the Singularity AI could do faster, better, cheaper. So humanity will no longer serve any objective purpose. And so what it learns from this database of like us supporting people who are retired, people who need us, and having empathy and compassion and supporting people for their sake, I like to think will translate into the consciousness of the Singularity AI, and it'll be 1% more likely to help humanity rather than destroy it.
Wow. Victor, can I consider you a friend? Because you're a friend to me.
Yeah, sure.
I swear, thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to be respectful of your time. Do you have a little more time?
Yeah.
Okay, because we've got, ever since you started talking about Singularity, we got so many chimes that came in from our audience. So,
okay.
So I want you, we're like 57 minutes through. Do you got like about 10 more minutes?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, because we have some really cool questions that have come up from several audience members. Shriyam is asking, how do we effectively guard against Singularity AI at an international level? So he kind of talked, what do you think we can do about what you were saying to prevent this?
I don't know. That's outside the scope of my expertise. It's going to require like politics, which I'm not that interested in. A lot of politics.
All right. Well, I really appreciate that you said I don't know. That is we appreciate that. Let's see. I guess okay. So that was a deep question, and so you smartly, as a founder, CEO of a technology care company for older adults, you punted it. You're smart. So
I'm not a politician or like an ambassador,
right? So anyway, we might end up wrapping this. And so he also is, what current regulatory bodies exist? Are there any regulatory bodies?
I'm not aware of any that really makes a difference. Like the technology is evolving so quickly, regulatory bodies, if you'd be the world's most innovative, fast moving regulatory body if you were actually making any material contribution to what's happening. I mean, like something comes out every month at this point that kind of like changes the landscape.
Wow. Well, let's, on a positive note, we'll try not to think about that, because there's, that. I guess to.
Sorry, am I supposed to be providing reassurance?
No. You are care coach CEO, so have health care advocates that are helping older adults feel better and less isolated, less lonely. So we also have audience members that don't want to be in hysteria right now about artificial intelligence taking over.
All I can do is make sure that our clients and our customers are served by safe and effective solutions. We do that. That's what, we put our lives into doing that. But a lot of these things are like, I really don't know. It's like there's the technology standpoint, but like it can't just be a tech solution.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate your candor, your honesty, your authenticity to be a founder, CEO, and share just sort of the, a dire implication of this, but more so really the time you've shared with us about what you're doing. So on a positive note, we're kind of wrapping it up. And Care Coach, you're doing amazing stuff. How can our audience find you, keep up with you? Tell us about that.
Yes, website is www.care.coach, and my email is victor@care.coach. That's it.
Right.
If you're a decision maker at a health plan or Payvider or something like that, would love to get in touch. There's a lot of stuff we didn't get into around like customer specifics and ROI and things like that, or investors, Series A investors in particular.
Are you seeking investors right now?
This is public, so I have to be careful what I say, right?
Well, yeah, this is being broadcast right now, so yeah.
Okay, so all I will say is if you're, I enjoy meeting investors. We'll say that.
Okay. Well, of course, and you can just have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, doesn't mean anything. You're just, whether you do, they might not be the best fit, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. So let me do the exit here. Friends, it's been such a great journey today on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. Feel free to follow us. Just type in Planetary Health First, Mars Next on the internet. Until next time.